Today I start my first series for the year, and as you know, this year our theme is God, and I intend to teach a lot in that direction. And our main theme verse for the year is in Genesis 1:1. So I'm going to start from there. So today I start my God series, and this is God 1. And next week, of course, I'll do number 2 of the series. My subtitle is The Eternal. The Eternal. That means that I'm going to talk about God and his eternal nature. And we're going to spend time to understand what it means when we say God is eternal, and what it means for us as Christians to know God as eternal. One of the difficulties or the observations I've made about many of us Christians is that we want God to do things for us. We expect things from him. We talk to him, we pray, but we know very little about the nature of God. And so pretty soon we get disappointed about things and we get confused about things because we don't truly understand this God that we worship, this God that we talk to, this God that we pray to. So I hope that this series will help us to understand God and to know how he deals with us. And so that our prayer, our study, our expectation will all be right. So God, the eternal. We go to our key verse for the year, Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I believe Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 is the most important verse in the Bible. It is the most important because everything else in the Bible stands on this verse. Without this verse, nothing else in the Bible stands. Everything is premised on Genesis chapter 1 verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It tells us everything about what life is all about. And Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 is God's self-introduction to us as he helps us to know who he is from this verse. And I've taught a lot from Genesis chapter 1 verse 1. I can say confidently that I can teach on this verse for a very long time. Because there are different aspects and perspectives I can bring on it. But for the meantime, I'm not going to stay with Genesis 1:1 for the rest of the year. I will deal with it this week. Next week, I will also go back to Genesis 1:1 and deal with another aspect of it. So, today we want to look at, from Genesis 1:1, the most important thing we want to look at is that God is eternal. Everybody say it together. God is eternal. Let's say it like we are in church. God is eternal. That's a very important statement because that's one of the important things we see from Genesis 1:1, that God is eternal. There are other words that can be used as synonyms for eternal. Words like everlasting, or forever, endless, infinite. All of it, in a sense, are talking about the same thing, although sometimes there's a difference. But God is eternal can be seen as everlasting, God is forever, God is endless, God is infinite. Now, it's very difficult for us as human beings to think of anything as eternal, because our human experience tells us that nothing is forever. Things start and they end. And so for a human being to think of something as eternal, it's just an amazing thought. It's very difficult to imagine what it means. The other time I was watching a documentary on the longest living things. It was part of my research as I was going to preach this message. Some of the longest living things that have lived for a long time on this earth. And most of them were plants or trees. A few were sea creatures. There is actually one jellyfish that is supposed to be immortal in the sense that it renews its life every time. And there are trees that have lived for thousands of years. And so in a sense, you can think of eternal. If you look at that tree, you can say, oh, that's eternal. But a tree that has lived for 10,000 years, 5,000 years, 3,000 years can easily be cut and bent. So it's not eternal. Its life can come to an end. And even the jellyfish that is supposed to be able to renew its life, somebody can catch it and fry it. And that's the end of its eternity. So no matter how long something lives on this earth, just one moment, a wind will blow it, fire will burn it, something is going to end it, and it will no longer be eternal. Last year in May, that's 2023, in Sierra Leone, those of you who know Sierra Leone, there's a big cotton tree that the Sierra Leoneans consider as eternal. It's been there. In fact, people have composed songs about how enduring that tree is. It's been there for over 400 years. And last year, there was a windstorm and the tree fell down after 400 years. This year I read that a tree that is supposedly was planted by Konfuanoche somewhere in Ashanti that has 300 years, just some people just went and cut it down. So when we talk about God as eternal, he cannot be cut down, he cannot be bent, he cannot be fried, a storm cannot move him, he's there all the time. That's the eternity of God. God is eternal. And when we say God is eternal, we mean that he is, has always been, and will always be. He is, has always been, and will always be. You cannot say that about anything that we know. Now, of course, human beings use the word eternal and forever in many ways. People say for things like, I'm eternally grateful to you. I'm eternally grateful to you. But that word eternal is used in a very subjective sense, because if you tell somebody, I'm eternally grateful to you, your gratitude started from somewhere when the person did you good. Before he did you good, you were not grateful. So your gratitude cannot be eternal. It has a beginning and it will end the day he disappoints you. You cut it down. And people say things like, you are my best friend forever. You know that he's not your best friend forever. He was not your best friend in the womb. He was not the best friend when you were born. He was your best friend whom you met maybe 3 years ago in secondary school. And one day they will offend you and you say, we have cut our relationship. We are no longer best friends. Now, I don't want you to think of God, when we say God is eternal, God is forever, God is infinite. I don't want you to apply this kind of human description of forever, eternal, and infinite to God, because sometimes we do. And so I've heard some people say, God has disappointed me. And it's because we don't understand eternal in the God sense as we should. So, Genesis 1:1 again, it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And I'm going to explain a little bit beyond eternal and what it means in this sense. Two important theological words, and I've used those words a few times in this pulpit. The first one is that when we say God is eternal, we mean he's transcendent. He's transcendent. It's one word you should always know, transcendent. What does it mean? It means he exists beyond and outside of all creation. He exists beyond and outside of all creation. When I say that a tree is eternal, It doesn't exist beyond creation because it is part of creation. When we say that, oh, this statue is forever, it can't be forever because it was made from the earth. Nothing in the universe can claim to be forever because it has a beginning. But when we say God is eternal, we mean he's transcendent. He goes beyond anything and everything that has been created. He goes beyond it. He exists beyond and outside of creation. There is nothing you know that exists outside of creation. Everything you know is inside of creation. Whether it's tables or mountains or rivers or the sun or the moon or planets or galaxies, they all are inside of creation. But God is outside of creation. He's outside. So we say he is transcendent. Let's say that together. Transcendent. And also means that God does not derive any aspect of his being from outside himself. There's no part of God that comes outside of God. There's no part of God that comes outside of God. What does that mean? It means God is God all by himself.
We've come to the end of this video. We believe you've been blessed. Remember, God's love is steadfast and unchanging. May his grace and peace be with you always. If you're new here, consider subscribing to stay up to date with our videos. Kindly share this video with your friends and families. You can watch this next video on your screen.